Joshua tightened the laces on his cleats as he sat on the edge of the concrete bench near the dusty field where the town's junior football team usually held their evening practices. The late afternoon sun beat down on his dark skin, casting long shadows across the empty bleachers, but his eyes sparkled with excitement. He had been waiting for this chance for weeks, maybe even months. Football wasn't just a hobby to him. It was a part of who he was, something he felt deep in his bones every time his foot met the ball. He had heard about the Westdale Wolves through a couple of kids at school and watched a few of their matches from a distance, dreaming that one day he'd be on that field, wearing their jersey, feeling the roar of the crowd in his chest. Today was the day he finally showed up. He wasn't officially invited, but he knew there were open tryouts happening every Tuesday and Thursday this month, and the assistant coach, a tired but friendly man named Mr. Hargrove, had told him he could come by if he wanted to give it a shot. The players had already gathered by the time Joshua walked onto the field, a mixture of nerves and determination churning in his stomach. He gave a polite nod to a few of the boys, most of whom looked him over quickly before turning away. They were all white, every single one of them. Joshua tried not to let that settle in too deep, focusing instead on stretching and jogging in place as Hargrove barked out the warm-up instructions. At first, everything felt normal. He followed the drills, passed the ball sharply, and when it came time to show off some shooting skills, he nailed a clean goal into the top corner that even made two of the boys nod in quiet approval. He wasn't just holding his own, he was doing better than most. Every time the ball came to him, it felt natural. His body moved instinctively, as if the field had always been his home. The players began noticing him, whispering a bit, but none of them said anything directly. Hargrove even gave him a few encouraging thumbs-ups. For the first 30 minutes, it was the best he'd felt in a long time. But then he noticed the shift. A sleek black SUV rolled up near the chain-link fence that lined the field, its tinted windows catching the last golden rays of sun. From the driver's side stepped out a tall man in a white windbreaker with a silver whistle swinging around his neck. The man looked military sharp, his movements precise, his jaw clenched like he'd chewed nails for breakfast. The assistant coach turned to him quickly, his posture stiffening, and called out, "Coach Reynolds," just in time. Joshua didn't know who Coach Reynolds was, but from the way the atmosphere changed, he could tell this man was important. The players immediately fell in line, some even straightening their backs instinctively. The coach didn't smile. He gave a curt nod and walked across the grass like he owned it. Joshua tried to keep focused, even as the man's eyes swept over the group like searchlights. When Coach Reynolds finally spotted Joshua, he froze mid-step. The look in his eyes was strange, confused, then something harder to define, something cold. He whispered something to Hargrove, who nodded and stepped aside. The coach walked directly toward Joshua, his boots crunching softly on the grass. Joshua swallowed, unsure what to expect. Maybe something about joining late. Maybe a quick intro. He tried to smile politely. "You," Reynolds said, his voice low and sharp like a blade. "What's your name?" "Joshua, sir," he answered, a little breathless. "Joshua Daniels." The coach looked him up and down, his lip twitching as if he'd tasted something sour. "Who told you you could be here?" "Coach Hargrove," Joshua replied, gesturing toward the assistant. He said tryouts were open. Reynolds didn't even glance at Hargrove. His eyes remained fixed on Joshua. "You can leave now." Joshua blinked. "Sorry." "You heard me," Reynolds said. "You're not part of this team. You can leave." Joshua's heart skipped a beat. "But I was doing okay. I thought this was just tryouts. I scored, and I don't care what you thought. the coach interrupted, his tone rising. "This is not the team for you. Go find somewhere else to play." Joshua felt his mouth go dry. His fingers twitched at his sides, confused, humiliated, trying to understand. "But why?" he asked softly. "I don't understand. I didn't do anything wrong." Reynolds leaned in slightly, just enough for the words to land like stones. "I don't want people like you on my team. Simple as that. Now, take your things and go." For a moment, everything around him froze. Joshua could hear the distant echo of a lawn mower from beyond the school, the shouts of children playing in a neighboring yard, the thud of his heartbeat in his ears. He turned his head slightly and saw the other boys staring. Some wide-eyed, others smirking. No one said a word, not a single word. Coach Hargrove looked away, busying himself with cones on the far end of the field. Joshua's eyes burned, but he refused to let them see him cry. Not yet. He bent down, picked up his bag, and slung it over his shoulder. Every step he took toward the gate felt like walking through cement. He didn't look back, but deep down, something inside him was already beginning to shift, not into shame, but into fire. Joshua stood just outside the fence, his hands clenched around the strap of his bag, but something kept him from walking away entirely. He didn't want to believe it had just happened. Not like that. Maybe he misunderstood. Maybe Coach Reynolds was just having a bad day. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't about his skin. But then he turned his head slightly and looked back at the field. All the kids lined up in formation, listening to the coach's voice bark orders like a drill sergeant. Joshua looked closer, and the truth slapped him harder than any words had. Every single kid on that field was white. Not a single exception. It hadn't been a coincidence. It hadn't been a misunderstanding. It was clear. It was deliberate. And that realization made his stomach twist. Just then, as if the moment itself demanded more cruelty, Coach Reynolds looked up and saw him still standing there. His eyes narrowed, and he immediately started walking toward the gate. Joshua froze in place. The coach came right up to the fence, stopping only a few inches away. "What the hell are you still doing here?" Reynolds asked, voice low, laced with irritation and something darker. I was just leaving," Joshua stammered. The coach stepped closer. "You don't get it, do you? This isn't a place for you." Joshua tried to hold his ground. "But I played well. You saw me. I didn't do anything wrong. Why are you sending me away?" The coach sneered. "You think just kicking a ball a few times gives you the right to stand on my field?" Joshua's voice cracked. "But I love this game. I've been training every day. I just wanted to be part of the team." Reynolds shook his head slowly, his voice calm but cruel. "I don't care how much you train. I don't care how much you love it. I don't want black kids in my team. Simple as that. You don't belong here. You never will." Joshua's heart sank, so deep it felt like his chest might collapse in on itself. The words hit him like punches, but somehow even worse was the casual, matter-of-fact way they were delivered, like it was just the weather being reported. "You'll never make it. You hear me?" the coach continued, his eyes hard. "You'll never be a footballer. Not with that attitude. Not with that skin." Joshua wanted to say something, anything, but nothing came out. His voice had shriveled up somewhere deep inside, buried beneath the shame, the disbelief, the cold slap of reality. He looked back at the field again. Some of the boys had stopped pretending not to look. One of them snorted. Another whispered something to his teammate. A couple of them even laughed, as if this was just another funny episode in their perfect afternoon. Joshua's hands trembled. His legs felt weak. He could barely breathe. "Go," Reynolds said again, his voice final, filled with the kind of disgust that left no room for argument. "Get out of here. Don't come back." Joshua turned away, his face burning, his throat tight. As he walked toward the edge of the field, the laughter behind him grew louder. Cruel, mocking. He heard one of the boys bark like a dog. Another one shouted, "Didn't know we had tryouts for zoo animals today." And then came the roaring laughter. It was all too much. Joshua picked up his pace, the tears threatening to fall, but he forced them back, biting the inside of his cheek until he tasted blood. He wouldn't cry. Not in front of them. Not here. He made it past the parking lot and across the street before he finally stopped, leaning against a tree, breathing hard, trying to make sense of what had just happened. His world had shifted in a matter of minutes. His dream, his passion, crushed not because of his talent or effort, but because of the color of his skin. And the worst part, no one had stood up for him. Not one kid, not even Coach Hargrove, who had looked away like he hadn't seen anything. The silence had spoken louder than any insult. Joshua kept walking, his shoes scraping the pavement as the weight of the laughter behind him echoed in his mind like a drumbeat he couldn't silence. They had laughed, not just laughed, but howled, roared, barking out cruel names and insults like a pack of hyenas circling a wounded animal. "Weakling. Go, cry home, loser. Maybe you should try ballet instead. Bet he can't even kick straight unless someone hands him the ball." The words mixed together with the sound of their laughter, their voices growing distant behind him, yet staying sharp in his ears like glass. They didn't just mock his skills, they tore into his pride, into the very thing that made him feel alive. They made it clear that, to them, he was a joke, a shadow, something that didn't belong. The sting of their words stayed with him as he reached the edge of the neighborhood, cutting through alleys, past old grocery stores and crumbling fences, until he found himself sitting on a curb near the local park. The sun was beginning to dip, casting an orange hue across the sky, and the silence around him was so loud it almost hurt. He didn't know what to do. His dream had been so close. He'd touched it, kicked it, lived it for a brief moment. And then it had been snatched away and crushed under the weight of prejudice. He didn't notice the man at first. He was older, maybe mid-30s, wearing a faded jacket and carrying a clipboard. Joshua hadn't seen him approach, but suddenly he was there, crouching down beside him. "Hey," the man said softly, "I saw what happened back there." Joshua wiped his face quickly, trying to hide the wet streaks, but the man wasn't smiling. He wasn't mocking. There was something real in his eyes, understanding, maybe even regret. "Name's Coach Miller. I run the Eastside Juniors. It's not as fancy as Westdale, but we play real football over there. No favorites, just players." Joshua looked at him skeptically, unsure if this was another setup, another cruel joke wrapped in fake kindness. But Coach Miller continued, his voice steady. "I saw you out there. You've got something, kid. That kick into the top corner? Cleanest shot I've seen all month. We could use someone like you. Tryouts are tomorrow. You show up, you're on." He handed Joshua a flyer, then stood up and walked away without waiting for a response. Joshua looked down at the crumpled paper in his hands. It wasn't much. Just a time, a location, and a faded logo of the Eastside Juniors. But it felt like a spark, small, fragile, but enough to light something again inside him. The next day, he showed up. The field was smaller, the uniforms weren't as crisp, and the equipment was older. But the kids were different. They were mixed, black, white, Latino, Asian, and none of them looked at him like he didn't belong. When he played, they passed him the ball. They cheered when he scored. And Coach Miller? He didn't yell for no reason, didn't bark like Reynolds. He watched, corrected, encouraged. Joshua started to feel something he hadn't felt in a long time, hope. Weeks went by, and Joshua trained like he never had before. He stayed after practice, worked on his balance, speed, precision. Every missed shot became a lesson. Every mistake became motivation. He was fueled not just by passion, but by something deeper, a fire lit by rejection, by humiliation, by the need to prove that Coach Reynolds had been wrong. Then came the announcement. The East Side Juniors were scheduled to play against Westdale Wolves in a regional scrimmage, an exhibition match before the city tournament. It wasn't supposed to be a big deal, just a friendly game, but for Joshua it was everything. When the day arrived, Joshua stood in the locker room, staring at his jersey. It wasn't new, the number was faded, and the seams were starting to wear out, but to him, it might as well have been stitched in gold. As he walked onto the field, the sky above was a soft gray, the bleachers only half full, but the moment was huge. And there, on the other side of the pitch, were the Wolves, all in perfect white, lined up like soldiers. And there, pacing behind them with arms crossed, was Coach Reynolds. Their eyes met for the briefest second. Joshua felt his heartbeat rise. Reynolds looked away. The whistle blew. The game started, and Joshua played like he'd never played before. He danced around defenders, cut through midfielders, turned passes into opportunities. Every touch of the ball felt like poetry. But still, the Wolves were strong, organized. The score stayed locked at 0-0 through the first half. The second half started, and Westdale scored early, a fast break, clean shot. 1-0, but Joshua didn't break. He pushed harder, drove the ball forward again and again, drawing fouls, shaking off tackles. The clock ticked down. 10 minutes left. Then 5. Then 2. And just when it looked like time was up, Eastside got a corner. Joshua stood near the edge of the box, eyes on the ball. The cross came in, high, spinning, and he leapt. The moment hung in the air like a breath held by the entire stadium. His head met the ball perfectly, and it sailed past the keeper into the top left corner. 1-1 the crowd erupted, small as it was. But Joshua wasn't done. 1 minute left. A mistake from Westdale. A bad pass. Joshua intercepted. He sprinted, dodged one defender, cut inside, shot. The net rippled. 2-1 game over. He didn't even celebrate. He stood there, chest heaving, staring at the goal as his teammates rushed him, cheering. Across the field, Coach Reynolds looked like he'd swallowed fire. His jaw clenched, arms rigid. He didn't speak. He didn't even go to his players. After the game, reporters and scouts came over to Coach Miller. They asked about Joshua, took notes, snapped photos. Word spread fast. Within days, articles popped up online. Rejected talent leads underdog team to victory. Coach who turned away future star under fire. Eastside's Joshua Daniels. The next big name. Then came the headlines. Coach Reynolds dismissed following controversy. Joshua saw it online the following week. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just closed his laptop and went outside to practice. Because now he knew the field didn't care about skin. The ball didn't care about hate. And the goalpost, that was his truth. His answer, his revenge.